What if a writing system wasn't just for communication, but was a cosmic secret, wrested from the universe by a god in an act of agonizing self-sacrifice? What if each letter was a key, capable of casting curses, telling the future, or healing the sick? This isn't the plot of a fantasy novel. This is the story of the runes. Welcome to 10-Minute History. I'm your host, Jake Sullivan, and today we're carving into the mysterious world of the Vikings. Magical alphabet. The very word for these symbols in Old Norse, run, means secret, mystery, or whisper. From their very beginning, runes were seen as more than just letters. They were power. Norse mythology tells us they weren't a human invention at all. The chief of the gods, Odin, a relentless seeker of knowledge, hung himself from Yggdrasil, the world tree, for 9 agonizing nights. Wounded by his own spear, starving and alone, he peered into the cosmic depths and, with a final, screaming cry, seized the secret of the runes. This origin story is the key to understanding everything that follows. To the Vikings, runes weren't just a tool for writing. They were the universe's source code, and Odin was the first one to hack it. But where did these symbols actually come from in our world? While the Norse had a long tradition of symbolic rock carvings, the idea of an alphabet, a set of symbols for sounds, was an import. The most accepted theory points to the Alpine regions of Europe around the 1st or 2nd century AD. Here, Germanic tribesmen serving as mercenaries in the Roman army came into contact with people using North Italic scripts, which were relatives of the Latin alphabet we know today. These Germanic innovators didn't just copy the letters. They adapted them, creating sharp, angular forms perfect for carving into wood, their preferred medium. Crucially, they gave each rune a meaningful name. The F sound was named Fehu, meaning cattle or wealth. The U sound was Uruz, the mighty wild aurochs, an extinct species of giant cattle. The TH sound was Thurisaz, meaning giant. This act of naming transformed a simple script into a deep well of cultural and magical meaning. The first complete runic system is known as the Elder Futhark, named after its first 6 letters, F, U, T, H, A, R, and K. This alphabet had 24 characters and was used for over 600 years. The earliest evidence of someone learning their runic ABCs comes from the carve stone, found in a 4th century Swedish grave. It shows the entire 24 rune sequence carved in order. But this probably wasn't just a practice sheet. Carving the full Futhark was likely a magical act, meant to consecrate the grave and protect its occupant with the power of every single rune. We also have clear proof these early runes were used for magic. The Björketorp runestone, a towering monolith from 7th century Sweden, carries a terrifying warning. A common translation reads, "I, master of the runes, conceal here runes of power. Doomed to insidious death is he who breaks this monument. I prophesy destruction." This wasn't a memorial, it was a supernatural security system, a magical fence protecting a sacred site. As Germanic tribes migrated, so did their alphabet. The Angles and Saxons who settled in Britain found that their language, Old English, was changing. So they adapted, expanding the alphabet to as many as 33 characters to keep up. But back in Scandinavia, something strange and counterintuitive happened. Just as the Viking Age began around the 8th century, the 24-rune Elder Futhark was radically simplified into the 16-rune Younger Futhark. This is a puzzle. The Old Norse language was getting more phonetically complex, but its alphabet was shrinking. Why? The most likely reason is efficiency. A 16-character alphabet was faster to learn, memorize, and carve. In an age of expanding trade and travel, this made writing more accessible to merchants, sailors, and settlers. The trade-off was that the script became much harder to read. One rune now had to stand for multiple sounds. The K rune, for example, stood for both K and G. The U rune could represent UOY or even W. To read a Younger Futhark inscription, you couldn't just sound it out. You had to know the language and the context to make sense of it. And the Vikings used this new, streamlined script to make their mark on the world in a big way. The most famous examples are the gelling stones in Denmark. Around the year 965, King Harald Bluetooth erected a massive, three-sided stone to declare his power. The inscription, which snakes around magnificent carvings of a great beast and a crucified Christ, boldly states that he, Harald, won for himself all of Denmark and Norway and made the Danes Christian. This stone is often called Denmark's birth certificate. It's the ultimate example of runic propaganda, using the traditional script of the Vikings to announce the dawn of a new, unified Christian kingdom. But runes weren't just for kings and gods. They were used by everyone, for everything. The most visible legacy is the thousands of runestones scattered across Scandinavia. But these weren't gravestones. They were public monuments, erected along roads and at assembly places. A runestone was a complex social document. It honored the dead, yes, but it also served as a public claim of inheritance and a display of the family's wealth and status. The inscriptions often follow a formula. Sponsor raised this stone in memory of deceased, their relative. But the details are what bring the era to life. Many stones tell us how a person died. He died in the east in Russia, or he fell in battle with the Finns. One of the most famous, the Gripsholm runestone, tells a complete and tragic story. It was raised by a mother named Tola for her son Harald. The inscription reads, "They traveled valiantly, far for gold, and in the east gave the eagle food. They died southwards in Sörkland." To give the eagle food is a beautiful, brutal, poetic phrase for killing enemies in battle. And Sörkland was the Norse name for the land of the Saracens, near the Caspian Sea. In just a few words, a mother memorializes her son who died seeking his fortune thousands of miles from home. For centuries, these grand stone monuments were all we had, leading scholars to believe that runic literacy was a rare skill, reserved for an elite few. Then, in 1955, excavations at the Old Wharf in Bergen, Norway, changed everything. Preserved in the waterlogged soil were over 600 small pieces of wood and bone inscribed with runes. These were the text messages, emails, and post-it notes of the Viking Age. We find business letters. Gyda says you are to come home. We find simple ownership tags. Eystein owns me. And we find intensely personal messages, like the simple, tender phrase, "My love, kiss me." The Bergen finds proved that literacy was far more widespread than anyone had imagined. Merchants, lovers, artisans, ordinary people were using runes for everyday communication. Which brings us back to the heart of the mystery, magic. The ability to make silent wood or stone speak across time was itself a powerful act. And the Vikings had a clear how-to guide for runic magic. The process started with carving the runes, often into a specific type of wood. Then, the runes had to be activated, usually by coloring them red. The most potent coloring agent was believed to be blood, which charged the symbols with vital energy. But it wasn't just about carving. Magic also involved chanting. A spell, called a galder, was sung or chanted as the runes were carved, combining the visual symbol and the spoken word with focused intent to achieve a magical result. Just as runes could be used to protect and heal, they could also be used to harm. The most infamous form of Norse curse was the nidstang, or knifing pole. In one saga, the warrior poet Egil Skallagrimsson is outlawed by King Eirik Bloodaxe. For revenge, Egil goes to an island, takes a horse's head, and fixes it on top of a pole. He turns the gruesome head towards the mainland, speaks a formal curse to turn the local land spirits against the king and queen, and then carves the curse in runes on the pole. This was a magical weapon designed to cause misfortune and drive his enemies from the land. But runic magic was seen as a precise science. Get it wrong, and it could backfire horribly. Egil's saga tells a story where he visits a farm where a young woman is gravely ill. A local boy had tried to heal her by carving runes, but she only got worse. Egil examines the runes, carved on a piece of whalebone under her bed. He immediately scrapes them off and burns the shavings, explaining that the boy, unable to properly read and use runes, had carved the wrong spell, effectively poisoning the girl with bad magic. Eagle then carves the correct healing runes, and she recovers. It's a perfect medieval analogy for debugging a faulty computer program. So what happened to this potent, magical script? The end began with the conversion to Christianity between the 10th and 12th centuries. The Church brought with it the Latin alphabet, the script of power, prestige, and the new centralized state. Runes became associated with the pagan past and gradually fell out of common use, though they survived in isolated pockets for centuries. After being rediscovered by scholars in the 16th century, the runes took a dark turn. In the early 20th century, racist and occult movements in Germany and Austria began to corrupt the symbols. The most infamous example was the Nazi Party. Heinrich Himmler's SS systematically adopted runic symbols, twisting their meanings to fit their hateful ideology. The infamous SS logo is simply two Sawilo, or sun, runes. The Tyr rune for the god of war was used on SS gravestones. This misappropriation left a deep and painful stain on the runes, complicating their study to this day. After the war, however, a revival began. Modern neo-pagan religions, known as heathenry or asatru, have worked to reclaim the runes from their Nazi association, studying the historical sources to build a practice grounded in scholarship, not hate. At the same time, the New Age movement popularized runes for divination. In 1982, Ralph Blum's The Book of Runes became a massive bestseller. His interpretations were intuitive, not historical, and most controversially, he invented a blank rune, which has no historical precedent whatsoever. While scholars were horrified, Blum introduced runes to millions. This revival has spilled into popular culture. J.R.R. Tolkien, an expert in Old English, based his dwarven runes, the Cirth, on historical models. Today, runes are a staple in video games like God of War and TV shows like Vikings, a standard visual shorthand for ancient northern magic. Even symbols often thought to be Viking, like the popular Vegvisir or runic compass, are actually much later creations, dating from 19th century Icelandic magical books. The story of the runes is a journey from a divine secret to a practical script, from a tool of magic to a weapon of ideology, and finally to a global pop culture phenomenon. They show us that symbols are never neutral. Their meaning is constantly fought over, corrupted, and reclaimed. The ancient secrets of the North continue to fascinate us because they are a direct link to a lost world, a tangible piece of the past that feels both authentic and powerful, its deepest mysteries still waiting to be deciphered. So, what are your thoughts on this? Are there any other historical writing systems you'd like us to explore? Let us know down in the comments below. If you found this interesting or learned something new, please give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to 10-Minute History for more deep dives. Thanks for listening.